and the collection plate got to coming around, and my grandma took my $5 and put it in the plate. And right there, I said, you know, God got to go, because I want my candy. And you know, don't everybody else, don't he get enough money? You know, why he going? Surely Jesus will let a child go to the store and get him some Starburst. That's all I wanted. So you know, I said, you know, God has taken from me, and not only has he taken from me, he ain't gave me nothing back. So all the times I've been calling on you, you know, where you been? But then you got the nerve to take my $5, and I'm getting a whooping if I object. So it was right there. I knew something wasn't right in my spirit. And then I would go to my grandfather Reese house when I was a young child. He's not my biological grandfather, but he's like a grandfather to me. And he had a lot of figurines and statues in his home. And one of them, he had a lot, but two of them, was a big life-size sarcophagus of King Tut. And the other one was a life-size sarcophagus of, a life-size figurine of Anubis, who was guarding the sarcophagus of King Tut. And, you know, it would speak to me. And, you know, I got to veer off really quick because, you know, the reason that, you know, America doesn't allow Afrocentric imagery out is because images resurrect memory in the DNA. So when
Hold up. You just blew half Vegas away. You got to have to say that again with a little breakdown to it. I understood what you said. Yeah. It's so powerful, we need to repeat that.
Well, you have memory stored in your DNA. And every time you have a child, you don't just pass down physiological traits. You pass down emotional and psychological traits as well. So, you know, a lot of times your fears come from your ancestors. For example, you might be scared of water, but you ain't never drowned. But one of your grandparents might have drowned. And or they might have almost drowned when they was a kid and grew up and had you, and now they done passed you down their subconscious memory vaults. Their subconscious memory vault, and in that vault is a memory of them drowning and being fearful. And now it's your job to work that out. So that's the whole point of self-discipline and meditation and things like that, is to clean out. Because when we say, you know, everything we got was passed down from our ancestors, they forget to tell you that the bad is too. So the whole point of self-discipline is cleansing out yourself, you know, genealogically, because everything you do, even the fact that you're able to think, comes from, you know, your DNA. Now, getting back on point, you know, they don't really allow what we call white supremacy, which is just actually, in this form I'm speaking on and in, psychological warfare. The reason they don't allow, images of Granger or, you know, black power invoking images out publicly is because it would awaken DNA that they need to continue to remain dormant within you. So if I showed you pictures of ninjas all day, and you grew up seeing ninjas all day, you would try to be a ninja. There's kids watch wrestling, and then they do wrestling moves on their family members. So we understand that imagery has a big influence on psychology. And when you look at the Egyptians, they didn't use words or vowels or grammatical text. They used images, because images invoke the left and the right hemisphere of your brain, because the right hemisphere of your brain is being used to admire the creativity of the image, and then the left hemisphere of your brain is being used to manifest out of the hippocampus part of your brain the memory of the story behind the image. So this is why ancestors even told stories using images, because it caused you to use both hemispheres of your brain. Now you just read a book and it's all words, so you're using the left hemisphere, you're not using the right hemisphere, which causes you to become diagnosed with the hemispheric imbalance in your brain, and then the Kundalini energy in your spine never raises, and that's a whole other problem. Now bringing this back to a point, when I was staring at the sarcophagus, it would like speak to me. Now, you know, a lot of people are gonna say you crazy, and you know, for purposes of proper decorum, you know, I won't curse you out. But I will tell you, you know, mind your business. I'm sane. I know how to count. I know how to spell my name. I'm not crazy. Now, with that being said, it would speak to me spiritually. And I was very attracted to it. I was very drawn to it. And I would it got to the point where I was infatuated with this room. And I would sit in the room. Whenever I went over there, I wouldn't want to leave. I would play with my toys in the room. And people would be like, you know, tell him to come out that room. But, you know, they'd be like, let him rock. Let him do him. So that was like my little sacred space, whatchamacallit, if you will. So that being said, the sarcophagus really was speaking to me. Now, I'm not going to go as far as to say I'm King Tut reincarnated, but I know that something in my soul heavily identified with that. And as I grew up, like when I would be in school, I remember in the history books, I would flip to the Egypt page. Now, if anybody remember being in school, in middle school or elementary school, you know, the whole class is always on the same page at the same time because the teacher's reading, you're following along. So, you know, different pages had different historical eras. So, like, they might be on you know, castles in Europe and talking about knights. And I'm on the Egypt page. So with that being said, you know, I was always drawn and seeking out the history of Egypt. And what happened was, by the time I was always the smart kid. You know, like all of my friends, you know, and I come from a street background, but all of my friends would tell you, like, you know, I was always the smart one. Like, I'm the one who you call and ask how you spell a word. So with that being said, when I got about the age 15, I started actually taking it upon myself to get books. So instead of me just, you know, finding books or coming across videos, I would actually go buy books. And I started reading them. And I started developing my mind. And I started attempting to express myself. But a lot of the times, you know, due to the direction I went in life, being in the streets and, you know, that type of era and doing illegal activities and just trying to be out here trying to survive and then going to prison, my greatness was, it was on a standstill, you could say. So, like, I was the type of person, I was in the streets, I might be hitting licks, but I'm listening to a lecture. This is real talk. I might be in a trap spot, but there's some books in here, you know. So when you rage, you're going to find some drugs and you're going to find something on the dope kind of thing. So with that being said, you know, I never allowed my intellect to slip away, but I wasn't able to cultivate it. And it wasn't until I went to prison for 3.5 years, where you ain't got nothing but time, where I cultivated it. And I remember being in my cell one day, and I didn't even actually get out of jail. I wasn't like, you know, no, I want to get out of jail. You know, I was what you call a hardened criminal. Like, if I'm in here, we gonna rock. So with that being said, I remember being in my cell one day, and I was meditating, and I had asked the ancestors, and I said, man, ancestors, you know, I'm not even asking y'all to get me out of jail, because I'm going to deal with this situation how I'm going to deal with it like a man. But I remember telling them, I said, man, I'm honestly tired of being evil. It's the truth. You know, and a lot of people, you know, I got to say this because a lot of people talking about they in the streets, but it's a difference just being outside and being active. You know what I'm saying? It's a difference just being at your job and you, it's a difference between somebody working at cashier and somebody that just own the place. You own McDonald's. You ain't never in there. You just collecting a check. So we talk about being in the streets. I was in the streets. I was selling drugs, being very violent. Police know me by my name. You know what I'm saying? I can't go nowhere.